right. Hello. My name is Hannah Vincent. I'm the Senior Training Specialist here with the organization. We've got Emily Gruning and Chaley Butler with us. And so Emily is going to kick it off. Emily is the Director of Leadership and Training. And so she's going to talk about what we do within the training department and a little bit about our organization as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. So hello to all of the students out there. My name is Emily Gruning, and I have been with Ryman Hospitality Properties now for, I think it'll be 14 years this October, this fall. So for quite some time, and have probably a unique story of growth within one company, which is probably something really special. And something that I have loved in my career. And so we're responsible for, leadership and training is responsible for all of the orientation and the onboarding of the organization, the job training of the organization, compliance training, and of course, all of our development for the organization as well. And so helping people move to the next role, helping them kind of maximize their potential and be able to continue to learn and grow just as people, but also here within our company. So obviously something that we're very passionate about. So we're going to talk a little bit about, personal development and our thoughts on it and how to think about that as you're, potentially, looking at working in an organization today as you go through school or as you're thinking about a future career, what are some of the things that you would want to think about and some of the things to, take into consideration as you're, looking to head that direction. So I'm going to start today just by talking a little bit about my story in terms of how I landed where I landed and talk a little bit about how I got to this organization and what that process has looked like for me. So I've actually moved to Nashville, right out of college, and didn't really have a super strong idea of what I wanted to do outside of college. I mean, I had a degree in interpersonal communications, and had made my way through my bachelor's and had a few different thoughts around some things, but ended up kind of selecting my place before I selected my career, if you will. And for me, probably ended up choosing the organization in a sense before I necessarily chose the role I was thinking about. And so, that's the way that it just kind of landed for me. And when I moved to Nashville, this organization, as it does today, has a strong name in this community. And I just knew that, that was somewhere that I would be really interested in working, and specifically within the hotel industry, within the hospitality industry, which is where I got my start at Gaylord Opryland. So, as I looked at the various sets of positions that were available within Opryland when I, started the search, if you will, the one that really stuck out to me was this position called the conference coordinator. And you were, the liaison between, all these conferences that would come into the hotel, and then also the meeting planners and our team. And so, you play this really cool role in helping manage through these conferences. So when I went into kind of talk about some of the positions that were available, that position wasn't available at the time. But they, recommended, entering the industry or entering the hotel in a different fashion. And so I ended up getting my start at the front desk and worked in the rooms division, and actually was just, checking guests into the hotel and, got to know that side. But what I think is important when you kind of think about how you, are looking at your career and what that next move is that you're always essentially preparing for that next move. And so for me, even though, I made my way into the hotel from a different role than I expected, I knew that that's where I wanted to go. And so the entire process was thinking about, how do I get to that position? And so, a lot of that was, thinking about how do I, be the best at the position that I'm in? How do I learn the most from this side of the hotel? Because it was a different, different department and a different focus for that than it would be for the role that I was looking for in the future. So how do I become a master at this so then I could take those skills with me into that role, because I knew that they still would cross over. And what's interesting, and this will come full circle at some point, but what's interesting is that I had a leader that actually tapped me and said, hey, I really think that you would be a fantastic trainer in our department. Have you ever thought of that? And, at the time I was, what I believed was fairly new. And so I was thinking, gosh, I just started. I don't even know if I know what I'm doing. But, she saw a lot in me, which I think was really cool and really a foreshadow for where I would end up, which is, really interesting. And so I, jumped right into that position as a trainer and took that on and spent about 9 months, in that trainer role. And again, not only being the best that I could be, but also being someone who's helping and onboarding all of these new employees to be the best that they could be, within the front desk. And so from kind of an early start in my career, training always kind of played this undercurrent role, even though, this other position is what I was really gunning for. And so, it came time where I again, always kept my eye on that position. And so I started to ask some questions about, how do I get there? What does that look like? And so I think another key important thing to think about is, A, what's your next move? And B, who are the right people to talk to about how do you prepare for that? So you want to do everything that you can to start asking that question before the position becomes available, because that way you're going to be, more highly considered if you've started to prepare for that versus, all of a sudden you're looking for that, but you haven't really got what you need to potentially get that role. And so I ended up, asking some questions. And so my leaders set me up to meet with the leader of that position and just have a conversation with her just to kind of understand the role better. Is that something that would be a good fit for me? Is it still something I'm interested in? And so I got to spend some time with that particular leader and just understand that position better. And so it was shortly thereafter that after meeting with that leader that a position came open. And so she was the one, again, that reached out to me and said, hey, just so you know, like I actually had a position open. So if based on our conversations, if you're still interested, you should apply. And so again, a lot of this was, because I started working on it before, it even was available. And so interviewed for the role, ended up getting the role and loved it as I expected. It was event planning. It was, working with various departments. It was understanding every aspect of the hotel. And so, learning those skills was, a key to set me up for any kind of future growth within the company. And so honestly, it was probably about almost 2.5 years in maybe. And, still was thinking about that next step, but I wasn't quite sure what that looked like necessarily. And, as becoming a new leader within that particular role, I attended some training sessions and different things. And I remember sitting in one of those training sessions thinking, I would love to be in the training department, but gosh, like that would probably never happen. And, there's such small, departments and what are the odds and so on and so forth. But it went through my mind and I sat on that for a while just internally. And then, I was in a one-on-one meeting with my leader and she said to me, she's like, okay, well, what's next for you? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And I thought, well, this is so far-fetched and ridiculous, but I'm just going to tell her like, hey, I was just really interested in that training department. I mean, I know it's small. I know there's not a lot of turn, like the odds of getting over there is probably pretty slim to none, but, interested nonetheless. So this is the perks of having a really great leader as well. She picked up the phone and she called the leader of that department and said, hey, I've got someone that's interested in coming over there. I know you don't have anything now. Just let me know if you ever need any help or if something pops up, I just want you to keep her in mind. That was it. End of the phone call. Months passed. And 2010 Nashville flood happens, and all of a sudden, all the roles within our organization shifted tremendously as we were trying to do our best to get this hotel open. And one of those roles was obviously, bringing people back after we had to furlough them and retrain them. And so the training department was so small that they were like, there's no way that we can, we can do this with just a small subset of people that we've got. So we need some help. And so that training leader was like, where is that girl that was interested? I'm calling her now to say, I need your help. And sure enough, I, got to help that team open, kind of reopen the hotel, and got to, as that leader, after she hired me, she said, you got to wear the dress before, before the show, if you will. You got to do the position, which is pretty rare, and probably would have been, again, very difficult and probably slim to none to really jump into that role without getting a chance to have that experience. But it's, it was an opportunity that presented itself, and I took what I could and ran with it and did everything that I could. And so I learned everything about the position. I was running orientations. I was, doing all of these things that would, showcase my skills and showcase, the passion that I have for the organization and all of these things. And so then a position opened up there, and, I was able to, interview for it and slide right in. And so, stayed within the training side at the hotel side of the business for about 2.5 years, until a training position opened up at the Grand Ole Opry and the Ryman Auditorium, which were probably a far-fetched dream that I ever had to work for, the entertainment side of our organization and those two legacy brands. And, but because I, had experience within our company and knew our culture and so many things, it definitely helped set me up for success to, hopefully, provide that the organization's entertainment side what they needed. And so I got that and have continued to grow this function on the entertainment side as well. And so I tell that story really to again, kind of reiterate how important it is to, always, be prepared and present yourself as if you are preparing for that next job and that you're interviewing for that next job. There are so many opportunities where you're going to interact with other leaders, or you're going to interact with, different guests or different people that you never know may have a substantial impact on your career that you wouldn't otherwise expect. And, how you present yourself in those situations is going to be crucial, that will help you either move forward or not. And so, for me, I, had a passion for training. I really always have, probably even growing up. And so it was just such a cool way to be able to kind of utilize those skills in a corporate setting with, brands and things that I'm incredibly passionate about. And so, I now in my role absolutely kind of try to pay that forward and do the same thing with my team, and, the same thing with the other leaders in our organization. So basically I get to kind of now oversee that and focus on that as a job in terms of how do we help move our employees forward within the company, and how do we personally develop them, and how do we make sure that they are coached and they're mentored, and that we see the potential that they have and we hone in on that. Because I was, when I think back to when I first got here, I was young, and I honestly didn't really know necessarily what I wanted, but I presented myself in such a way that someone saw that potential in me, even when I may not have seen it in myself, and pushed me in this direction. And so I'm forever grateful that I had really strong leaders through the process. And so, for us at this company, it's, how do I help our other leaders be, just as strong and help see the potential in their employees and help move people forward. So that's kind of my story. That's how I think about personal development and why it's so important to me, not only for my function, but just me personally, because it's definitely led me to where I am today.
That's awesome. I always love hearing your story. So Now we're going to introduce Chaley. And so Chaley has a much different story within the organization and has such a unique perspective. And I always love opportunities to talk with Chaley because she just has so much great experience. And so Chaley, if you want to kick it off and tell us a little bit about you and what personal development, having a personal brand means to you.
Yes. Hi, I was like, oh, am I going to be muted? That's the story of our lives currently. Did I remember to unmute? Hi, my name is Chaley Butler. I am a corporate operations trainer on the leadership and training team with Emily and Hannah, which has been great. My background comes from restaurants, so I have a pretty strong food and beverage background, and that is how I ended up here. I moved through sort of all positions in restaurants into leadership, where I found training as my passion, mostly because training allows you to focus on the details when perhaps your current job role isn't on those specific details. For instance, as a server or bartender, it's your job to be very fluent in your menu, ingredients, all of those things. And as you move into leadership, like Emily mentioned, your focus really turns from guest facing in a lot of ways to employee facing. So you're focusing on HR policies or procedures or payroll, scheduling. And I found I didn't know anything about my menu anymore. So it was a really natural progression to focus in on training. And I found that as an operations professional, focusing in on the details of your service to ensure that each employee has an efficient and pleasurable experience can really be rewarding as a leader. So that's what moved me into training in general. And much like Emily mentioned, sort of by happenstance, certainly by no smart choices of my own, I matured through the industry and was able to realize the importance that developing my own brand, how I represented myself, how I communicated with my leaders. I tell this story a lot in my current role, where I have the opportunity to travel around the country and train our certified trainer team here at Ryman Hospitality Properties. But in my current role, I tell this story a lot about when I learned that I needed the why as an employee, I became a much more successful employee. And in a tipped environment, that means dollars and cents, a lot of dollars, if you can be more successful. So when I learned that that's what I needed, I was better able to communicate with my leaders and found myself to be much more successful, which ultimately led to my promotion into leadership. If I hadn't figured out how to communicate, how to represent myself well, and how to really be great at my job because I loved it, I wouldn't be where I am now. And so continues to be a learning experience. The unfortunate thing is that's not one you learn once. Ooh, look at me. There we go. I got a new fancy camera. So it's not an experience you learn once. It's not a lesson you learn once. Each time you grow, you have to start sort of at the bottom. We talk about that a lot. My boss put together this amazing Train the Trainer class that I get to teach. And we talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just of like basic human needs, right? And each time we move up that pyramid of life, I feel like we start over again at the bottom. And we really have to ask ourselves continually, what can I do better? What are my deficiencies here, both inside myself, right? And within the job itself. So for instance, I have my own personality traits that I try to continue to work on because I have to work in a group environment. And I can only be so much myself before other people probably will drive them crazy or something. And also when I moved into this role, my job really changed a lot from operations focused to being focused, say, on a lot of admin skills, a lot of computer skills. So creating PowerPoints, using the whole Microsoft Office suite, which as a restaurant employee, certainly you don't use. And even as a leader, oftentimes you don't really have the option to need or use. So really honing in on those skills. And I'm lucky I'm in a place where, I have a leader that was willing to train me. Thank God she is the director of training, but still it's important to note, that is not always something that people are confident in doing. And so when you hear people in organizations say, I want to move up, I want to grow. We now in our department are able to look at our organization and say, what can we do to help leaders feel more prepared to train and onboard someone who may not already have the skills that the job requires, but they have the right? And so that is something that we're all passionate about on this team, and our organization is passionate about as well. So that's something we get to look at. But yeah, so skills, continuing to grow those, and really, like we always say, just being willing to internalize that. And instead of saying, what is you doing? It's really more about what is me. What am I doing and what can I better? And that's in skills, I think, and in your own personal brand and how you represent yourself. And like Emily said too, I think there is a great balance between being willing to do the job and taking the opportunities that you see in front of you. And as Hannah, I think will mention as well, also the courage and the professional maturity to know that you need to state what you want with your leader as well. You need to be able to go to your leader and cultivate a relationship with them and let them know what it is that you're looking for. Because I think I read it in some Harvard Business Review, no one is going to pluck you out of obscurity and say, you, Chaley Butler, you're doing everything right. You have to stand up and say, this is what I want. This is what I'm interested in. I want to continue to grow and develop. How can I do that? What are the next steps I can take to continue and develop on this path? So I hope that was useful for you, Hannah.
Oh, absolutely. No, I love that. And so true. And I mean, my story does similarly align with Emily's. Whereas I graduated college and I already lived here. I didn't have to move here, but I was just looking for a place to find myself. And I did not immediately find myself here. I found myself in a position that was not very well suited to my skill set in an organization that had little investment in what I was doing. And it was a very big learning experience for me, because when you leave college and leave school, you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm ready for that big jump. And sometimes it's not a big jump. Sometimes it's starting from scratch and finding your niche, like Emily mentioned. And so very similar to Emily, I started working at the Opry House in the tours department after my time with the company before that ended. I was putting in all of these applications and, just trying to get my foot in the door anywhere. And it can be such a grueling process and can be really hard to keep pushing forward, especially when you've gone through several interviews and then you don't get calls back. And it sometimes takes a long time to find that fit. And around the time that I found the opening at the Opry House, I was starting to lose a little steam just from all of the rejection. And it can be hard, but I still, had faith in myself and that I would find the right place for me. And so I put in an application to be a tour department lead at the Opry House. I, had done some campus tours in college and always enjoyed being around people, and grew up knowing what the Opry was, being a somewhat Nashville native, moved here when I was very young. And so, to get that opportunity to go in and speak with those leaders, that I think was what sold me as the leaders of that team. And I think it's so important when you go into an interview to kind of get the vibe of the people that you're going to be working with, and if it's a good fit and if you're going to be happy there. Because I probably could have told that from my first interview with the prior job that it wasn't a good fit for me. But, walking in and having an easy conversation with these leaders and being excited about the role, I think was really important. And so I was in the tours department for a little over a year and a half. And like Emily said, just tried to be the best at that role. I think that's something I've always, as a bit of a perfectionist, wanted to do. Is I wanted to be the absolute best and work my hardest to set myself apart. And so I did work really hard to have a really great tour and to, have rapport with my team and to have a good relationship with my leader. And so I was able to have open conversation with her about where I saw myself going. And the leader of that team is best friends with my current leader, Miss Emily Gruning. And so I kind of had a connection with Emily and met with her. And then, I saw an internal opportunity pop up for training, and I had done training within the tours department and really, again, love working with people and helping people. And I really think at the end of the day, that's what this role is all about, is helping our people. And so interviewed for the job and been in this role for over 2.5 years now, so which is crazy. And so, now I get to do our company orientations and speak from that side of the business, my tours experience, and talk about how important it is that we give these guests, exceptional service. And I can kind of talk to it from both sides. So, it was challenging for me coming out of college with such high expectations and maybe not finding myself immediately where I thought I was going to go. But I think through having, open and honest conversations and, like Chaley said, stating what you want and being able to be your own self-advocate and talk about, what interests you and what excites you. I just recently received a promotion that kind of put me working more in a direction with the communications team, because through much like Emily with the flood with COVID-19, my role changed, and I helped different departments in different areas of our business. And I took, that horrible thing as an opportunity to show other skills and to step in where I could and to really try to help out my team. And so I think that paid off. And it's kind of how you react in those moments of crisis and those moments of hardship and where everybody's stressed out and there's a lot going on. It's how you react to those kinds of things that really sets your personal brand apart. And so that's something, I am proud of that I was able to do, and now get to work more in different ways that are exciting to me. And so, just always kind of being the best where you are is definitely the best philosophy, I believe. But then, like Emily said, knowing where you want to go and kind of being open and honest in that conversation as well. So, and then of course, listening and learning from those around you. I have learned so much through my conversations with Chaley and Emily, whether Chaley and I are at Panera having smoothies, just chatting, and like I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around things, or, I'm in Emily's office for a one-on-one trying to figure out, what the next step for me would be and how I can be better where I currently am. That is how you truly grow as a person, is by creating those connections and having people you trust to talk through things and bounce ideas off of as well. So anything else that you ladies want to mention before we get off? I know we've talked a lot about ourselves and our journeys, but I think sharing that journey with people kind of gives a good idea of how it's not always a straight path to where you want to go. And it's important to focus on yourself and your own development. So I think, each of these stories may relate to somebody in some way. So if there's anything else y'all want to share, feel free to hop on.
No, I would just say too, I know some of you are, and I kind of mentioned this, are potentially working now as you're, making your way through high school and whatnot. And so I would just say to, take advantage of that opportunity when it comes to working for some type of organization, and just get to know the kind of the business side of things and how, different organizations function and what that looks like, and, kind of lean into that. That would probably be the one thing that I would, go back and tell, my younger self. I definitely had some jobs here and there throughout, high school and college. But, the more opportunities I think you have to just better understand, the business side of things, because no matter where you land, it's a business. And so there are aspects of that I think, when you have a better understanding of that, walking into the role, it helps you to know where you can influence that, where you can impact it, and just social norms and what's expected of you and how to present yourself and all of those things. And so while it might just feel like, a job to, make some extra cash or, put yourself through school or whatever that looks like, there's so much to be learned from that experience. And I would just encourage you to do that.
Absolutely. And I think I made a lot of connections through my experience, in those jobs as well, and learned a lot from those leaders, because I worked all through high school and then did internships and several jobs in college, working on campus and such. And, I have lifelong friends that I made from that. And I also have lifelong connections that, I can help people maybe in their career, they can help me and stay connected. And so I think that that's also been really important for me in my personal development too. I worked at a bowling alley as my first job, and my leader there was like fantastic and let me write a schedule and let me learn to count down the register and do all these things that I probably wasn't yet qualified to do, but she was there with me, teaching me those skills, and it helped to give me more confidence in the workforce as well.
Absolutely. Networking. I cannot say it enough. That's like my favorite go-to. Build relationships, keep in touch, and you never know when that will come full circle for you in the future.
Never fluff the show.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for setting aside the time to do this. And I hope all the students that are partaking, that this is helpful to you. Our company really is passionate about education and partnering with our local community and in leadership and training. Obviously, we believe education is important, and want to provide the best information we can around what we do. And so we're always happy to answer questions and give more insight on the things that we know and we do here. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Hannah.